I would love to watch any and all Pokemon. Why would you just say that out loud?
I'm documenting.
Oh, you want on the record, and I will respond to your DM soon. Ooh, kinky. Are you guys flirting?
Yeah.
Oh, it's
totally.
the fucking audio file, isn't it?
No,
No,
I'm his dungeon master.
No, it's flirting.
This is the difference between the two of us in an exchange.
Exactly. All right, Magellan,
clapped.
get us right into it. Roll us right into it, baby.
I
Baby
will.
bottle pop.
Baby bottle pop. Baby bottle
Baby
pop.
bottle pop.
Baby bottle pop is fucking delicious. You should buy one at the store. Hello and welcome to Chats a Television Podcast Season 16, Couch Madness. 16 shows enter, one emerges as the show we will watch for the remainder of our season. Who will win? Who will lose? And who will die? My name is Magellan, and they aren't the podcast. They're the thing that gets us to the podcast. It's Alan.
Sheesh! One of my favorite lines of television of the past 20 years, and you've turned it into a pithy introduction. That's so Joe McMillan of you, Magellan. God.
I'm just sitting across the table from you, staring at you.
Yeah, and I'm attracted?
Yeah,
Intimidated?
it's all part.
Both?
It's all part of my process.
And the intimidation tactics?
Part
Of it. Thanks, babe.
Hey, how you been?
I'm doing all right. I have so much to talk about today, and I want to get right into it. So I'm buzzing. I said some really weird phrase last week that I want to comment on.
Okay.
Where we were like about to pick or something, and I was like, oh, I'm like busting on elbows or something. Like I said something like completely not, and you were like, yeah, you're busting on elbows. It wasn't that, but it was something like that where I was like, the greatest thing about not having an audience on your like a live audience for your podcast is that people can't be
No one
like,
can boo you.
he's not cooking. What the fuck did he just say?
Right.
I just get to say words, and that's the beauty of language.
That's funny.
But yeah, I'm doing all right.
That's great. Should we give people the weekly update on our fantasy basketball league? Just tell them how things are going.
Yeah, sure. Magellan this year wanted to be involved in a fantasy basketball league. That was one of his goals this year.
Uh-huh.
And I have been in one for a few months. So I made a brand new one with him, my roommate, and a couple of friends. And it has begun. Are we towards the end of week 1 yet?
We're starting week 1.
Oh, that's why
right
I didn't
now,
have
today.
any points until now.
Yeah.
Okay. How are you doing so far?
I'm currently winning my matchup.
What?
5 versus 1, so I have 5 points.
Yes.
Is that what that is?
That's
Great.
correct.
I have the second most points in the
I'm
league.
tied with my matchup, and my roommate is losing 8-1 against the person they auto drafted. He's playing against an auto drafted person.
Is that
My roommate watches basketball.
okay? That's not a computer. That's a person. They just auto drafted.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Oh, I'm 8 versus 0 right now. Actually, I wasn't totally up to date. There are games happening right now. Anyway,
Okay,
point
great.
is-
I wish you the best of luck until we go against each other. In which case, I don't wish you the best of luck.
Is that next week? No, it's in 2 weeks. We go
2 weeks.
2
yeah.
weeks. Okay, cool. Anyway, we could jaw about ball.
John Morant.
Well, he actually had an untimely
Aw.
end to his season.
Yeah.
After a late start for various reasons. Anyway, John Morant stuff. We could jaw about ball all night long, but we're here to talk about television shows. 2 of them, in fact, that are on the bracket. This is the last matchup of round 1. And following this matchup, we're going to move into the, what would those be? Quarterfinals? No. Is that even a type of finals yet? I don't know. It's round 2 when there are now 8 shows instead of 16. And that's what's going to come up soon. But first, tonight, I assume people listen at night. It's not the nighttime right now, but it wouldn't be
It
dramatic
comes out
if
at
I
9 a.m. on a
said
Sunday.
this morning we are discussing our 11 seed Halt and Catch Fire, which has the first episode I.O., written by showrunners Christopher Cantwell and Christopher C. Rogers, the Christophers, directed by Juan Jose Campanella. Campanella, I'm assuming is how you pronounce that. Maybe Campanella, I don't know. Aired June 1st, 2014. We first discussed Halt and Catch Fire on Pilot Chats 40 back in August 21st, 2021. Same episode. We last discussed Halt and Catch Fire on Pilot Chats 40, which aired August 21st, 2021, the same episode where we discussed 6 Feet Under. And the other show we're watching is our 6th seed Death Note, first episode entitled Rebirth, but we'll get to all that later. And Alan, we're not going to do this alone, okay?
We're not?
Don't be scared.
Oh.
This week we're joined by a friend who came on because they were bored. It's 6.
Hi, how's it going, y'all?
Oh, we're great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, I told Alan I was working on a bit for a while where I was going to use I was going to do sort of the reverse of how you do the introductions. I was going to do one for each of you.
Yeah.
With lines from the shows you'd watched.
Yeah.
But I only found one that was good and it was sufficiently creepy.
Okay.
So I ended up not doing that, but instead I'm going to do lines from the interviews about catching fire characters for each of you. Are you ready?
Okay.
I'm going to warn you, people are kind of in interviews, people are they think these people are broken. And so he's a dinosaur aging out of the business. It's Magellan.
Ooh.
Oh, gosh.
And they're an acutely damaged man underneath the slick suit's bravado and motivational speech. It's Alan.
Nice.
I got compared to Lee Pace.
Oh, no, actually, that was Gordon. No,
Fuck!
yeah.
Oh. Who is the dinosaur? Gordon's not a dinosaur. It's the
no,
what's
it's
the boss guy.
The old
It's
guy.
Toby Huss's character. Yeah, the
Okay,
boss
I
man.
like that guy.
Bosworth.
He's fun.
Bosworth is the best side character on the show.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for coming on, 6. Why did you join us for this pair of episodes? What was the rationale?
So I run a weekly show called Oops All Anime, where we are doing sort of like an extended Pilot Chats, 3 episodes for every anime that's ever existed. We're making good progress. I think we're almost there. We've been doing it for 8 years, 7 years, something. And with y'all dipping your toes in the world of anime with Death Note, I was like, well, I would love to come along and help. I hear they have people come on and do some helping, and I think I'm the one for the job. And then Alan was like, we're also doing Halt and Catch Fire, and I was like, sure, whatever.
That simple. Sometimes it's that simple.
Well-
Well, 6, I love talking to you, as people know, as with our history on the Garnet Wager and the Quorum, the Creature Quorum, and other shows. And I'm thrilled to have you here to talk about shows regardless of whether or not you have familiarity with them.
It's always a delight to be on Chats.
And in fact, I think 6 is notorious for coming on to talk about shows that they're not familiar with. If you remember our Peaks Chats coverage. Anyway.
Well, and also there was Powerless, where I showed up for
Oh yeah,
the second to last or last
I don't
episode.
remember.
And then there was
Amsterdam.
New Amsterdam, where I showed up for the second to last episode. And
We watched the
Good,
whole show.
good. Oh, I forgot about that. I forgot.
no, I didn't.
Oh,
I
even
never
better.
watched I never watched the very last episode.
Oh
It
yeah, you
wasn't on
caught
for
it. You
It
caught
is
up.
still on my
That's
hard
right,
drive.
that's right. All right, well, let's talk about Halt Catch Fire first. As our 11th seeded show, our lower seeded show, I gave the credits before. Alan, let us know what happened in the pilot episode I.O. of Halt and Catch
a few
Fire.
things happened, Magellan. In this episode, Joe McMillan, a fast-talking salesman and enigmatic visionary, comes up with the idea to reverse engineer his former employer, it's IBM, his PC into something better and cheaper. All he needs are the right people to help him accomplish this. And he's joined, of course, by Gordon, who is a nebbish, fresh out of jail computer engineer and salesperson who has a wonderful wife, Donna, who's also working for a tech company. They have 2 daughters. And Mackenzie Davis is also hired on as the youth hacker, basically poached from a college campus to help them build the PC project. Yay. And then everything goes bad at the end because IBM is here and they're going to investigate the whole thing. Gasp. So here's the thing, guys. I do this every time. I just listened to us talk about this. I'm already sick of my own opinions on Halt and Catch Fire's pilot. Tell me new thoughts. I want to start with 6, the fresh one.
Yeah, I'm curious.
What did you think of the pilot of Halt and Catch Fire?
I I find the premise really fun, right? There is a unfortunately, thanks to the way media has turned out in my life and the things I've seen, I have this weird affection for pseudo revisionist history shows, kind of like Newsroom, which is a bad show. And is a mean comparison to bring off the bat, but just this vibe of like, yeah, but if I'd been there when the PC revolution was happening, I would have handled it,
Mhm.
right? Because of course, spoilers here. Our characters and our company, Cardiff Electric, this is all made up, right? None of this happened.
Yes.
But listen, if Lee Pace was there, he would have fixed the personal computer. So, I find that premise like kind of silly and fun, and I find a lot of the tech stuff that happens in the show like engaging. And then when it falls into like the beats of Western prestige television, I find it insufferable.
Wow. Well, it's mid 2010s prestige television, so it's of an era for sure.
Yeah.
And it's AMC, so there's parts where I'm like, you don't have to be this mature. You can just like tell a fun story and let this be a little bit lighter. Like I think it takes itself a little too seriously in parts, but I'm just enamored with the aesthetic of the show, the computer, the analog computer technology, the outfits, the fact that it's 80s but doesn't feel cloyingly 80s like your Stranger Things or other stuff that takes place in the 80s. I still really enjoy this pilot, even though I agree it's very much of its time. What about you, Megan?
Yeah, I think when I was watching this now for a second time, I had very similar opinions to 6, where I still really like the setting. I like the choice of moment and like the shared objective that the characters have. I think it's hard for me to take it as seriously as the characters are, especially because as they're like talking about the computer could be so much more and they're dissecting the circuit board or whatever, I'm like literally watching the show while I'm sitting on the toilet and it's on my phone, and it's like hard for me to just be in that world where these people are like, come on, this could be the next, and it's like, no, this all is going to be kind of stupid eventually. But it's still fun to watch people really care about a thing. I think everything that that kind of turned me off of it or from it is the show just having Mad Men disease. It just 100% is like, all right, we're going to try to do another one of these, because the Lee Pace character is basically a Don Draper type. There are nuanced differences between where they are at the beginning of their story and what their objectives are and what their problems are and all that stuff. So they're not exactly the same, but it feels like the Joe McMillan character is meant to remind you of Don Draper, at least in some ways. I don't love the like, we're gonna have sex in the back of the arcade thing because we have to get this pilot on television or whatever. It's starting to feel like to me like every adult cartoon, people talked about in the Discord a bit recently, every adult cartoon, like cartoons aimed at an adult audience, have to front load the sort of fuck piss shit jokes, and every like grown up historical prestige drama thing in the first episode has to be like, don't worry, they're fucking, it's for big kids, all right, on to the next scene. And like, that's annoying. And I think I only have so much bandwidth right now to watch shows about unhealed men who like could just be going to therapy. But it's interesting. Like the setting's interesting. It's like Texas tech guys. What's this guy all about? So that's my thoughts. Anyway, Alan, what do you think? Do you have the same thoughts that you had the first time, or?
Yeah, no, I said before, like I was enamored by the look of it and the feel of it. I agree. It's very when I say of its time, I mean all of what you're saying, like the magical man disease. But the thing is, I've been thinking a lot about that specific trope and the history of that trope in the 2010s lately, because they just put out a new episode of a new season of True Detective. And the first season of True Detective, which was the same year, 2014, really felt to many like the end, the final conclusion, the final gasping breath of that trope. because it is so much about the fundamental evil of men like that. And I think Halt and Catch Fire just happened to be caught in the middle of that trend. And as somebody who's watched the first 2 seasons of it, if I can give it a little bit of credit, the show knows now and will later make it abundantly clear that like Joe sucks and is making things
Right.
actively worse, but
Right.
with his misanthropy, and will eventually be pushed further and further out of the show until he's barely a footnote in the story. This is a show about Gordon and Donna and Cameron, and the work that they do building what will, I mean, they talk about it like if we can network these computers into some sort of internet of some sort.
Yeah.
So it ends up being more about that. I do think that there's also criticism of like shows about doing the work, but I do love shows about people doing the work. I've said this before. Like, you know, creating things, even if, yeah, watching this in a time where especially the internet right now feels so much worse than it did even 10 years ago when the show came out. I think it is hard to get enthusiastic about building a computer when you're like, all this is going to get us, all this internet stuff is going to get us is like Twitter, you know, and that's the worst place in the world. So I get it. It's a little bit of a letdown in that way, but I still think that, I mean, it's fun. You can't tell me this episode's at least a little entertaining.
I think it's great. I love we're running over an armadillo right at the beginning. Like
Themes.
all right,
Did you get it?
Something. Okay. Visuals, themes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the script I think is pretty tight and funny where it needs to be. All the characters are well rounded. I still enjoyed it. And also was like, okay, this is a little 2014 for me, but yeah.
Six, you're not a big fan of this type of show in general, right? You weren't. What were you watching in 2014? I guess.
Oh, God.
That's the hard question.
That's a great. I mean, what was on the air? I don't know. 2014 shows. Wikipedia, help me out. It's brought up the Mrs. Carter Show World Tour. I don't think I
Yep.
was watching that. That's like
Watching
concert.
The Leftovers. True
I don't know if
Detective?
I was watching anything.
BoJack Horseman.
No.
Okay, 2014 is a pretty good
Um,
year for TV. Fargo started. A lot
Power?
Of I don't know what that is. What is that?
Power's the like. It's basically like Sony's Heroes. They debuted at E3.
Oh, it was like only
it
on
didn't-
PS3 or whatever for a little while.
Yeah,
What a weird
yeah.
thing. Or
So-
PS4, I guess. Well, also here's something.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. You're from Southern California, Silicon Valley,
Mhm.
Northern California, but you've moved across the country in your lifetime. Is
Absolutely.
there any
Numerous
attachment to
times.
this setting? Have you spent a significant amount of time in the South? Does this feel like the South to you?
So I spent some time in South Carolina, right? I grew up there from like ages like 2 to like 9 or 10, I think.
Yeah.
And I think, Texas very much has its own vibe. It's certainly part of the South, but even within the South, it's its very own, very strong subculture, right? I do, however, think there is this like knee-jerk distrust of anyone from East Coast elites and that sort of thing that props up here with especially Haas and his character here. Huss, excuse me, not Haas. That's a different thing.
He might call you Haas, but
character of Bosworth.
Yeah.
So I think that rings fairly true to me of this sort of like well, we do things a little differently around here. Beyond that, most of my experience of South Carolina was sort of defined by like intense gender roles and racism, and I didn't see that very much in this first episode, which I would think is a good thing, but doesn't make it feel like the South to me. And
Sure.
if you assign me to make a show and you're like, make it look like the South, I literally respond, got it, make it shitty. So I'm not the person you want for that.
Yeah, there's kind of, at least for now, like an invisibility or an erasure of race in this show. So there's not much that
Yeah.
we can comment on there other than like its complete absence. And then I do think the way that this episode handles gender roles and gender dynamics is interesting. Because they clearly make a concerted effort to frame a lot of those like home scenes from Donna's perspective, or like make sure that she's in camera a lot, to kind of highlight like the division of labor and the frustration that she's feeling about Gordon kind of floating through the house. And I really like that scene where it's like, could you fix the kids' toys, please? And she's not asking
Get the
because
cup
she doesn't
from
know how
2
to.
feet away.
Right. She's not asking because she doesn't know how to fix it herself, which she makes clear by then doing this sort of like, the way an army soldier breaks down their rifle or whatever. She like gets the screwdrivers out and opens the thing up from the back. So I think they do a good job of kind of telling you over and over again that she's just as brilliant as he is, and she's like living this domestic life because she wants to, and she just wants him to be invested in it. So I like the way that they kind of tell that story, and then also give us the scene where she comes home and he's like done all the stuff, and they're showing you that feeling when your husband does chores, and it's like, oh my god, it's so good. I do think by the end of the episode,
it really felt like he was about
to.
to.
We're gonna say 6. Sorry.
It really felt like the setup for that, given the context of where we are on the arc, really felt like he was doing the setup to like, so I'm probably fired.
Right, like he's trying to make something go down smooth. Yeah. And I do think by the end of the episode, she's a little bit saying like, go for it, live your man dreams, and I give you permission to do it, which felt, I don't know, I didn't love that, but I also can tell from what you're describing, Alan, that like that's not where that conversation ends. Like the show's gonna continue to explore their relationship with each other, her role in all of this, and that I think is like something that distinguishes it from a Mad Men, where in some ways Betty Draper is like a great character who's showing us the complexities and nuance of what it's like to be a housewife in the 60s, where you're just expected to like live this domestic lifestyle and you can't leave that sphere. But in other ways, Mad Men then kind of had to invent some weird plot stuff around Betty Draper to like create plot on her side of the story, because it's a drama TV show, and didn't really ever integrate her with like the main drive or themes or with Don's story. So I like that it feels like Donna here, there's more of kind of a synergy between let's explore the separation of spheres, and also she's tied into Gordon's plot, and they're like truly partners in their relationship.
It's what, again, like going back to what I was just saying, this show lands in not a like racial equality, but the beginning of like understanding gender equality in television in the way that we understand it today. Not to say it began with this show, obviously, but like women totally get a chance to do things and be cool in this show. 100%. Over time, they do more cool things than the men do. People of color don't, which is a problem when your show takes place in the South in the 80s. And also just takes place in the world ever. People of color are responsible for a lot of incredible things in the world of computing. The show does eventually introduce more of them, but to my memory, most of them are like grunt characters, people who work, like the interns, the people who work are where we get our different like lovable characters. But it's a weird show because it takes so long to build to that, and so little of what I like about the show is even in season 1. To the point where it's like, I think The Leftovers is a good show in season 1, a great show in season 2, and an amazing, perfect show in season 3. I still recommend people watch that first season. I genuinely don't remember what's good about the first season of this show. Like, I just, beyond what you've already seen here in this pilot. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd like to be proven wrong. I mean, besides like vibes, which continue to be good, and like history of like computer science, that's all good stuff.
I do get some enjoyment out of watching Joe McMillan mastermind, like do this tightrope walk of like pissing every single person off and making it impossible for them to make any other choice except do what he wants them to do. Like that's kind of an interesting thing to experience. And I think Lee Pace is a very magnetic performer, so I can enjoy him playing a reprehensible jerk. So I could see myself enjoying that for the time it takes to like get through a first season to the point where the show is like doing other things besides having that kind of character in the driver's
I think
seat.
it's interesting the way like Joe McMillan as a character and Lee Pace's performance of him, like I feel like swings kind of wildly back and forth in this episode to me, because I think there are parts where you're right. There is like a scheming and charismatic, like not quite malice, but I mean there's that point where like the founder of the company, after Joe McMillan explains the situation, like spins around and snaps on him, and he's like, "Listen, this is what's happening, and I can deal with it. Do not pretend you're doing me a favor. I will not tolerate that."
Yeah.
And there is a level of Macmillan's like scheming that is like, if you turned it up a couple of notches, he would fit on Death Note, right? Like
I 100% felt the same thing.
cartoonish in a way
When I
that's
was
fun.
watching Death Note after, I was like, wait a minute, this is the same show.
and it's fun, right? But I think the problem for me is there are points where the fact that it's not Death Note, and I'm not trying to make this show Death Note, but the fact that it is not this ridiculous, outlandish thing all over makes some of the Joe McMillan stuff not hit for me. Like when he's giving this speech to try and, sell the computers. He's trying to sell some clients. And he starts out by being like, "Yeah, I'm from IBM. We used to be the best. And then we started, like just falling into corporate, stagnation." And that really hits. And then it pivots into just like, "But buying computers from me is about being brave. It's about being a man." It's like, this is nothing, bro. Or like this scene where he's in his apartment, just like he has a baseball bat trophy, and he rips the bat off the trophy and starts hitting baseballs into his wall and his window. It's just like,
pretty sure
this
that's
is
not the first time
ridiculous.
he does literally that. I think he does the baseball bat thing more than once. Men.
and it's just like, what, beyond the fact that you're like bouncing off the walls of the tone of this show in a rather physical metaphor, what am I supposed to take from this?
Yeah, I think a big thing that the pilot of *Halt and Catch Fire* wants you to be asking at the end is the thing that Gordon asks when all the IBM lawyers are coming in, and he turns to Joe and he's like, "Well, what do you want out of this?" Or like, "What's your goal here?" And they kind of want us to be wondering that so that we can watch the next episode, see what comes next. And so, like you're saying, Six, they're giving us a little bit of it's a lot of misdirection and confusion around, well, to what extent did Joe plan this whole thing out before he even got to Cardiff versus how much of this is him improvising? Because like it paints him in a very different way if every single solitary step that he's made throughout the whole episode is premeditated, because then he's just like a sociopath. Or if it's like he knows that Gordon works here and he's kind of just gonna figure it out, then it's like, okay, well, he's kind of an egomaniac, but he's like, I don't know, he's not quite as cold and calculated as he could be. And they don't really want us to know by the end of this first episode. So if you respond to that character by being like, well, I actually don't care which one he is because I'm not that invested in that ambiguity, then I think the very ending of the episode falls flat. So that's just sort of like a grain of salt thing on this pilot, I think. That I think probably worked for me more the first time that I watched it and not as much the second time.
I think like part of what works for me is you set the phrase like cold and calculating, which is the classic description, right? But I think the thing that is kind of compelling is that he's warm and calculating, right? The vibe I get is this is a guy who, at least a lot of this stuff he planned to create these problems and this stress in people's lives, but he does actually think he's ultimately doing them a favor.
Or he's very good at making people feel that way about him. Like, that's the other thing that I'm not sure about by the end of this episode is like, does he really care about computers and like what's coming next for computers? And that's like an earnest passion, and he's going to do whatever it takes to like be a part of making history? Or is he just like, I just want to win. Like, I just want to prove. I think what Gordon says is, what are you trying to prove? Which is a pretty important question. And so it's like, are you just trying to prove that you can do it? And like, you don't actually give a shit about ideologically what you're talking about.
But the way he talks to, like, after they've done the disassembly and stuff, I mean, there's a little bit of "we did it," right? Which is fair because he was very active in that process, right? But for the most part, he's like, "Look, Gordon, you can do it." He feels like a psychotic hyper enabler, right?
True.
Where he likes going places and being like, "I make the magic happen. I show people what they can be."
Yeah.
I think
I
that's
agree with
why
that,
I love his relationship with Gordon. I said this in the pilot, but I really want to reiterate. There is like a, the show wants there to be a romance between him and Cameron, and it doesn't really work because of not only the age difference, but the fact that they just don't like each other and they're bad for each other, period. The real romance is between Gordon and Joe. Like, sincerely, not romantically, but romantically, not sexually, but yes, sexually. You know what I mean? Obviously they spend a weekend together in the garage and get embarrassed when the wife walks in. Like, that's charged, especially in the 80s. But I thought especially about the scene where he goes to the movie theater to quote unquote bump into Gordon, Donna, and the kids and be like, "Hey, just wanted to bump into you again and see like what you think about that thing." And he, comes in with the leather jacket and the sleeves rolled up and his little thing of popcorn, so he looks normal but also mysterious. And it's like, everything you're doing is charged because I think that you find people like Gordon fascinating. Like, y'all are both DMs, so like, I think that Joe McMillan is a chaotic neutral type. He sees something as normal and wishes to change it and upend it. And he sees that Gordon has the potential to make something big and has been squandered by his family life and by his job. So he says, what if I just pulled you out of it? And like, doesn't really think about the consequence of that and how it damages Gordon's marriage and life, but he's infinitely interested in this little pet project that is Gordon here.
Yeah.
And like, how can I make this guy squirm a little bit and make him change? And what is that going to do to him?
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense.
I find all of that super, super duper likable, or not likable, but that's the stuff I come to this show for. And that's maybe what season 1 does best when Joe is still a main factor in the show, is like, how does he specifically do things to Gordon? I couldn't stop thinking this time on this watch about how Gordon starts the episode coming out of jail, I believe. Do we ever get confirmation of what he did?
He was drunk, like publicly intoxicated or something like that. He was in the drunk tank.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So it's nothing like life-threatening, but it is, a arrestable offense. I mean, it can be life-threatening, obviously. So we know that
if it's more than that, you would have to tell us, because we haven't seen the show.
Correct. To my knowledge, it's not. But, like, we know that Gordon is not just depressed and bored. Like, this is the Tick and Arthur from the Tick if, like, they weren't superheroes.
True. Yeah.
They were just people with that relationship where, the Tick or Joe McMillan is like, "Hey, Arthur, you can do whatever you want. Why don't you go and try it? Go put on the costume." And Arthur, a.k.a. Gordon, is just, like, fascinated by it. He's even wearing glasses. Oh, my God, it's right there. Give me the Tick reboot with Scoot McNairy and Lee Pace.
Yeah. And I think that dynamic is what bridges this show with Death Note, is, like, that genre of story where the main character, or the most relatable audience surrogate character, I guess, is like a disaffected person. Usually it's a disaffected man who like doesn't like their lot in the world, doesn't like how the world is, and just wishes there was something they could do about it. And then there's this other character who like barrels into the story, who has all of this capacity to make change happen, but doesn't have the direction that like this main character who's been stuck in stasis has. And I think that dynamic is pretty compelling, because you get to see a character who's like, powerless or lacks a feeling of agency, but has all these strong opinions, matched up with somebody who's like boundless potential to do shit. But isn't
is Joe McMillan Ryuk, or is Joe McMillan?
Joe McMillan is
Light?
Ryuk, and Gordon is Light in this version of what I'm describing.
Got it.
But in a way, it's the other way too. It's
that's
anyway.
this is all very funny because we're talking about, and I agree with all of this, but also there's this moment where I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, like, we're talking about this relationship between these two and how wild and eccentric Joe McMillan is. And we haven't touched on Mackenzie Davis's Cameron Howe. And I'm like, gee, Halt and Catch Fire, your mom lets you have 2 manic pixie dream boats?
Right. Yeah, it's a little...
She's not a character yet.
It's a little unclear to me what the long game is with Cameron. Because, yeah, it does feel like she plays at the arcade and she's got a quarter on her finger and she's got a short haircut and knows everything about computers. And, like, she'll fuck a guy and then be like, what, we weren't in love? Like, it just doesn't, there's no there for me yet. So we'll see, I guess, what she becomes as the show
She's
goes
just
on.
smart and has no discipline, but she's really good at everything she does.
Yeah.
She ends up building the OS of this computer. So let's just
Yeah. It's the part, like, when you said that the writing was strong, it is the main thing that made me want to object, is that I think pretty much everything with her was pretty rough.
100% agree.
I do think at the end her, like, clear discomfort at being in a corporate setting certainly works really well, and is a good opportunity to maybe pivot the character from just being, you know, this, like, nerd wet dream character in a way that's really unsatisfying to me. But
yeah, I like the fish out of water, like, I'm gonna put on my professional clothes, but it's like kind of a tacky sweater that doesn't match the rest of her outfit, and
because it's camo pants down the
yeah,
line.
like that moment says a lot and is a version of Cameron that I'm much more interested in than the girl who's sitting in the back of the lecture hall. Like, all these guys in here don't know shit about the internet that doesn't exist yet. So I like where this pilot ends, because I was sort of finding myself losing the thread a bit of, like, what I was enjoying between minute 24 and 40 or whatever. And then those last 4 minutes where they finally put all of the chess pieces in place, and it's like, okay, now we can start. The show that felt good, and I was like, okay, well, I'd watch another episode of that.
Do we have any stray notes on Halt and Catch Fire before we talk about our main event tonight?
Don't think so. I like this is an industry built off of people ripping off each other's boring ass ideas, is one. I think that's the version of what Cameron said to Joe. I love when the scene where you learn that Joe doesn't currently work for IBM is when he's talking to Toby Huss's character, and you, as the audience member, you learn over the course of the scene that he's not, like, selling stuff to this Cardiff guy. He's interviewing for the job and trying to convince him to give him a job. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, you're kind of pathetic a little bit. I think that scene's really good. And I love when Toby Huss's character says, look at you, same suit, different tie. Like, you can't fool me, man. I know. And then he says, like, you didn't even bring a resume. And Joe McMillan brings out his W-2 instead of his resume. such a funny character move.
I think Bosworth is an important character to the show because he cuts through the BS so easily. Like, as we learn more about him and his family and stuff, you're like, nothing Joe does works on him. It's completely like immovable object, unstoppable force. With the two of them, and I love that relationship a lot. I thought it was given the premise of what they have hired Cameron to do, the legal scene where Legal is sort of like asking her questions, sort of like to be like, okay, have you ever, you know, messed with an IBM computer? And then just sort of like subtly, you know, shaking the head like to cue you, like, this is where you say no. Love it.
Is first of all, it's a fun scene, but also it's what her job is, because she's going to be reporting to Gordon, who knows how to make an IBM BIOS, and she supposedly doesn't. And she's going to be like, and I thought right here I would just do so, you know, a few dip switches, and Gordon will be like shaking his head, and she's like, actually, I didn't think that.
I've never looked at a computer before.
So that's kind of funny to me. The parallel.
All right, I think that's what we got. Let's move on. The second show that we watched this week was Death Note, and its first episode, Rebirth. Death Note is based on the manga by Sugumi Oba and illustrated by Takeshi Obata. The screenplay is by Toshiki Inoue, and it was directed by Tetsuro Araki. It aired October 21st, 2007. And John, can you tell me what happens in the first episode of Death Note?
In this episode, brilliant but bored high school student Light Yagami discovers a Shinigami's notebook and plans to use it to create a better world. It's a very charming way to phrase it.
Yeah, that was written by Light Yagami. Hold on, that was written by him.
All right. So
The jig is up.
Six, you've seen all of Death Note before?
No, I have
Whoa.
seen almost all of Death Note. I stopped a little ways into the second season.
Yeah.
For
good choice.
Well, I don't know if I agree. At the time, I would have agreed with you. Rewatching, I'm not sure I do.
You would have watched further or stopped?
I would have.
earlier?
I would have watched the whole thing.
Oh.
And I don't know. It feels like giving the game away to explain that stance now.
Well, let's get there. Let's get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be clear, I've seen all of Death Note. Alan has not seen any of it.
Wait,
except
really?
Simpsons. Is that
I
correct?
thought that was backwards. That's
No,
amazing.
Magellan has seen
I've
Death Note.
seen it
I've
all.
never, until yesterday, watched any Death Note. Except the chip scene, obviously, because that's the best.
Sure. You have to take a chip and eat it. I mean, that's just life.
Here's the thing about Death Note. I'm sorry. I know I'm the one
What
who
do you think?
who hasn't seen it yet.
I want to hear your first.
Death Note to me
impression.
was always the show that like emo kids really liked and anime nerds really liked, and it was so impenetrable and seemed dumb, and I didn't get it, and it was like, oh, it's so like goth, and I was right, but that's a compliment to its aesthetic and its like narrative ideals. It is not trying to be a show that is like super duper smart, or maybe it is, but it's not hitting like that. It is, I would say, borderline campy in the portrayal of Light and his desire to be, a hero of justice through his ability to sit in his room and write names on a notebook and make people have heart attacks. I think Ryuk is hilarious. I'm so disappointed, though, that this episode didn't give us what people watch Death Note for, which is the Light and L dynamic. I know about that, obviously.
Sure,
That's like
right.
literally the next episode. But it's just so fun. It's so good. There's no build up to like this kid's a sicko. Like I read up and watched a lot of like young adult stuff as a kid, and it's always like, they try the thing and then it works once and they're like, oh no, what have I done? I'm so bad. I need to like figure this out, and they show it to their friends, and it's like no. He tries it once, it works, and he goes sick, and then he proceeds to put like 600 names in it, and he's like, this is working. I'm doing this, and you're like, are you the villain of your own show? This is great. I have never watched a show that seems like it was written for teenagers where the main character is explicitly just the villain. And I love it. I love how deliciously shitty he is, and like unapologetically so.
Yeah, I think the pilot it has like really genius pacing choices, because it does what you're saying, Alan. It does the thing of like, okay, here's the supernatural concept, the special power that this kid has. He tries it out. Oh my God, it works. And then we go and we check in on Ryuk, and he comes down to human world, and we come back to Light, and we think, okay, now we're going to see the scene where like he's thinking, oh, should I write a second name? But they're like, no. He's been cooking. Like he's totally cool with this. And then they flash back to when he was agonizing over, am I doing the right thing or the wrong thing? Because it's like, we know we're going to get to him writing a bunch of names in the Death Note. We're not going to waste your time here. We're going to give you the justification that he has settled on. But what I like about it is, instead of us actually seeing him going through the philosophical thought process, we get his version of the story, right? And so like you're both told, Light, he seems kind of bad and villainous, and also the show's telling you, and you're gonna get his version of events, so you're gonna have to make of that what you will. as you go through this and follow his perspective. So I like the way that the pilot represents that. And the stuff that I like about Death Note that the pilot starts to get into a little bit is the Death Note itself operates by very specific
you love
rules. And what's really fun about this show is not just that it's a cat and mouse game between Light and L. Oh my God, am I going to get caught, writing all these names in the Death Note? But it's also a show about, like, can I work within the letter of the law of the Death Note itself? And are those rules going to, like, make me operate in a certain way? Or because already in this first episode, he's like, well, I have to make sure that I'm really careful about cause of death and that I'm, like, spacing these things out when I write them. But also I'm going to do this in a way where I'm explicitly showing people under certain circumstances that this is a supernatural thing. And that's what I think is, for me, what I really like about Death Note overall. Is
one thing I really enjoy is you get this picture, like, of Light as a character that I must admit, I thought, I am embarrassed perhaps to admit that when I first watched Death Note a long time ago, I was more like, Light, you're making bad choices, but I think your heart's in the right. No, what? What 6? No, it's not. Don't give people this much credit. But you get this line at the end of the episode where he's talking to Ryuk and explaining what he's doing and what he's planning to do. And he's like, anyone who's bad, I'm just gonna kill them. And then I'll make a perfect world full of nice people. And he basically puts it that way. Yeah. And Ryuk is like, oh, that's really noble of you. I guess all that would be, the only shitty person that would be left would be you. And you get this line from Light that, like, at least for the moment, forecloses in, like, any, as you've mentioned, Alan, I was like, who said it? God damn it. Alan, you were like, oh, you'd expect all this conflict from Light about, like, what he's doing and whether it was right to do. And at least for the moment, it is very firmly closed on this line from Light where he says, Ryuk, what are you talking about? I'm an honor student. I'm the best of humanity.
Oh, that was the moment. Yeah, that was the moment. Like, this is a show about a villain. This is a show about somebody who's positive that they're doing the right thing. My favorite type of villain, who's like, obviously this is good. I get rid of the bad people, and doesn't once, for even a millisecond, go, hold on, what does bad mean again? Oh, crap. It's really flexible, and I might be, making moral judgments that a literal teenager shouldn't be allowed to make. That is going to be problematic.
The part where he's like, he has that flashback to his crisis, and he's like, God, who am I to judge? And he's like, oh, the best person. Okay, never mind.
I'm all good.
What's going on with the apples? Why are there apples in this one so much?
That's just the biblical stuff, right? You've got a lot of, like, the OP kind of gives away the game that this is going to very heavily feature, like, traditional Christian, like, angelic and, like, Garden of Eden kind of imagery.
Yeah.
It's just, fruit
from
knowledge.
The forbidden fruit, you're not supposed to have this. Like, you're not supposed to have the Death Note kind of thing, I guess.
Also, just Japan thinks apples rule. Which, I'm not saying they're bad. It's just, like, there's a disproportionate thing.
Right? So, giving somebody fruit, especially round, perfectly spherical or round fruit, is, like, considered a, like, act of huge kindness, I believe.
But specifically, I mean, like, again, from having watched almost all of anime, as I say, we're almost there. Apples come up so much as just like, oh man, there's nothing better than an apple. Sure. I'm like, I like a good apple. I'm not trying to shit talk apples. It is just a little disproportionate.
God, there's a part where this is not a True Detective podcast, but there's a part in the new True Detective show where a dad who's, like, estranged from his son, the son comes home to steal evidence from his house, and he's, like, trying to distract his dad. He's like, yeah, I'm really hungry. And he's like, you want to make you a snack? And then the dad, who, like, does not have his life together, is like, I don't have any snacks. 10 seconds go by. Hey, do you want an apple? I have one apple. I don't know if it's good. That's probably food, right? Probably food is the way I'd always describe apples. They're satisfying, though. With a little peanut butter. Oh, baby. Love an apple.
Yeah, I think it's also a good little symbol or stand-in for, like, when Ryuk eats them and loves them and says, oh, what's the word for this? Juicy. Oh, yeah.
Ryuk's a freak, dog. He's so freaky. I love him.
He's a little freak. Yeah, it's nice. But it's kind of a comedic parallel to what he's doing here and why he set this plot into motion, which is just that it's more exciting and interesting to do this than to not do this. Like, he just wants a little taste of something sweet and juicy. And I really like that as his only motivation. Like, I guess he's an antagonist in the show, or maybe a sidekick, or he kind of like plays different roles at different times.
Yeah.
But I like that the apples are there to help that characterization.
And he's a great source of comedy, right? Of just sort of lightheartedness. Like, the first bite he takes of the apple is of the stem, and he's like,
Normal thing to do. I'm also fascinated by the way the show is directed. You don't think about that very much with anime.
Yeah.
But I wrote in my notes that this felt like an AMV for a show that already existed in parts. And I was like, no, but that's this show. Like, it cuts and frames people in the way that like an edit would do. It looks so unique.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Every time there's a moment of writing something in the Death Note, it's like, I'm going to take my pen out, and the camera's like, swoosh, let me follow this pen like 5 feet through the air. And then it's like so dynamic and action packed, and lots of cuts and weird angles and things like that. It's a fun
that
show
sequence, which is representative of a lot of the stuff they do in the show, but that sequence of him writing a bunch of names, which is like shaky cam rack zooms intercut with like death Dutch angles, is like, you are wilding and I'm here for it.
Yeah, they do that every episode all the time. Like, that's not just a pilot thing. That's
I've seen parodies of like, what if, getting food from the cafeteria was like Death Note, and it's like flip, Dutch angle, slow down, and then he like picks up a burger and goes, and like, now I'm gonna eat this.
Which adds to what you're saying, Alan, of like, I don't know that the show was made with the intention of being campy per se, but it is. Like, that is a very campy thing, which it makes for a fun viewing experience. Because like, I was explaining the show to my girlfriend, and I was like, well, it's kind of an edgelord show. And she's like, edgelord? What's that? I was like, how would I define or explain that term? But the nice thing is it is, and also, like you were saying, you can enjoy it from the perspective of, okay, this is all kind of dumb. Because the show isn't bought into what Light's doing. It wants to make it look cool, and I think probably what the show's trying to do is say to the audience, look, I bet if you had the Death Note, you would like think that you knew exactly what to do, and you would make a bunch of choices, but like, maybe you'd be wrong. What do you think about that? But in the process of opening up space for the main character to be making bad choices and look ridiculous, it just looks ridiculous, and you can enjoy it on that level, which is nice.
Personally, it is one of the things that like makes me the angriest in media. It's like an irrational pet peeve, where you have works that think they're being very smart and are supposed to be about very smart people, and they're clearly written by a very dumb person. Like a lot of like murder mysteries. I'm thinking mostly of video game murder mysteries where the solution is that they time traveled to kill their clone or something, and you're like, that's really stupid actually. You think that's smart and it sucks. That's a fake one. I didn't spoil anything for y'all. But the thing about
Crash Bandicoot 2, sorry.
The crystal.
Crash.
But Death Note's so over the top with it. It's like, I don't know, right? I believe the original writer of the manga like genuinely thinks this stuff is cool and like thought provoking. The people who adapted the anime, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that reads.
But regardless, the end result is that it is so like, it presents so straight-faced, dramatic, serious with its material that if you can't smile along with it, I don't know who you are.
Right.
Which is why I think it's so funny that people watch this when they were teens, like presumably when you don't maybe fully get the campiness of it, or maybe you do. I just like, people taking Death Note seriously concerns me. It's just not a show that invites you to take it too seriously.
I mean, I can just give me a second, Lade. All right, my past self is here. You have any questions? This is past 6. Listen, you need to understand that there are some really high-level mind games going on here, and I know the aesthetics feel ridiculous to you, and that's understandable, but they need to give you a comfortable divide because the material we're talking about is so serious and so impactful that if you
Wait,
didn't have this layer of metaphor, you'd be freaked out, man. Magellan.
Past six, I have a question for you.
Yeah, what's up?
Oh my God, how do you know my name? What? Oh my God, my name is in the Death Note. No, just kidding. Yeah, if you got the Death Note, what
That's a great question. Well, obviously, I mean, President Bush is really wilding right now, and I think I got to take care of that. So,
yeah. All right, you passed the vibe check. You're cool.
no, they really weren't. But you know, there were seeds. They'd get there.
I just feel like anything I would do to use the Death Note would like upend society so much that we'd have more problems than solutions if I did it. Maybe. I don't know.
Intriguing. I wonder if there's a show that could go into this.
That's exactly what I'm interested in watching the show for. Is like you like let's say like okay, actually, Alan, 29 years old. What would you use the Death Note for? Who would you kill? It's like, well, I would start killing like people who child soldiers, people who manage child soldiers.
Oh my God.
Owners of private military companies.
I'm sorry, I forgot how old you were, and I was like 29 years old. Yeah, your past self. I get it. Oh
yeah.
no.
I'm a little baby, and I also feel so old all the time. I'd get rid of a lot of the rich people in the world. I'd get rid of most billionaires, and it's like, would that work though? Would that fix the? I hope it would.
Right.
But what if you just kept writing though? I mean, like it's not a one-time thing.
But
right?
that's the conflict of the show. Is like, well, then you fix it by keep writing and keep getting rid of the people who replace the bad guys, and like that has to end eventually. Especially when a fucking freaky barefoot goblin man, 17-year-old or whatever, decides to pursue you to the ends of the earth to find you, then yeah, you're running on a time limit.
Yeah, you've only got 37 episodes or 12 Takoban. Those are volumes.
It's to some extent like, the show is not super interested in like a grounded discussion or thought about like what would you do with this power, because they're hopping straight to the most extreme possible thing. But I do think what's cool about it is it's an interesting study in like not necessarily absolute power corrupts absolutely, because we're not seeing the whole corruption process. It's just like, boom, okay, I already have everything I want. 500 names of petty criminals. It's more a study of when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and what that thought process looks like. Because Light is wielding quite a lot of scary power, but it's very narrow in what it is. The only way that he can address and solve problems in the world is by killing people. And so what does that, like what Six was getting at there, okay, you fix one problem by killing somebody, but then somebody takes their place. Oh, well, I guess I have to kill them too. Oh, now this other problem is created over here. And it becomes easier for you to like use the power because you're building up this justification of, well, I used it before, or, well, I just have to solve this problem or whatever. But in the process of doing that, everything gets filtered through. Well, the only way for me to exercise agency or see my goals fulfilled is to use the tool that I have. And like, what does that do to Light, and what does that do to the world? I think it's a pretty interesting thing.
You're saying the things they want to hear. Like, what if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Like, you can't just kill all the bad people and then the problems go away, because that's not how systemic problems work. They are built into our society, and to restructure our society, you have to get those people to reform, to understand. There's like valid uses for violence, for sanctioned violence, or non-sanctioned violence, but I don't think killing the president fixes the problems with America, for example. You know what I mean? And I think that's something I want to see the show tackle.
What about sorry, go
ahead. Well, just a quick thing, and I do think a hesitation or like a caveat that I have for the show is it's not so much interested in like what is justice as it is interested in the kind of like ethics side of, is it justifiable to kill, or like So it would be cool if it really understood and examined what you're describing of that kind of like structural stuff. And I think a story that had a Death Note as the main device could do that. But I think what this show is more interested in, which makes it more of like kind of an action-y, protagonist-y like character study, but also limits its scope as a story. It's interested in, what does it do to Light, or to Light's kind of eternal self, to pass judgment on people and kill them, and is that justifiable, and like how deep do you have to keep digging once you're already in a hole, kind of thing. But it's a funny moment to me in the pilot where Ryuk is like, oh, by the way, like any human who uses the Death Note doesn't go to heaven or hell. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to tell you what happens. You'll figure that out when you die. And you're like, oh, shit. Okay. So our eternal existence is at stake. But also it's already forfeit. So, like, what are you going to do now?
Can I ask a question to both of you about where this show goes a little bit? Is that
no?
valid?
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the deal? What's L's deal? Is he likable? Do we like him? Do we want to be on his side?
L is a very fun character. You'll have a good time with L.
Okay. The reason I ask that is because it's kind of like, who do I want to see win? Because in usual stories like this, like in murder mysteries, for example, you're like, oh, I want justice to win. I want the law enforcement to win. And if L is like just a weirdo, like he's not a good person necessarily, then I think that adds an even more interesting dynamic to the show of like, there isn't a good guy and a bad guy. They're both just like weirdly flawed, strange individuals. And I'm into that.
That is the dynamic.
Ugh, yum.
And I mean,
yeah.
L is trying to stop Light from doing his thing, which is kind of, I would say an objectively moral thing to do, fundamentally.
Yeah.
Right.
But the show pretty quickly pushes you out of that space. Like that part is always there, and it is not uninterested in that. But like as Magellan has said, it becomes very much like, like when you're in a hole, how deep do you have to keep digging? Where it is like they are so caught up in me versus you that the stakes of their fight, it feels like they almost forget at times.
I dig it. I really dig that.
Right. It becomes more of like a battle of wits, and it's more like, well, who's gonna win? And that's in and of itself kind of thrilling and interesting. And sometimes L is like in it for the right reasons, and sometimes it's like, oh fuck, I gotta catch this guy.
Yeah.
Wow, he's brilliant, but I'm more brilliant. Like, here's what I'm gonna do. It's that kind of thing.
I'm into that.
And I know some of the stuff you've seen, like I know some of the parody videos you've seen, and it's like the thing that makes them effective is how not even that much parody they are.
Right.
Where it's like, oh man, if I order he wants Taco Bell, but if I order a cheesy gordita crunch, he'll know I'm Kira. If he doesn't order a cheesy gordita crunch, he's definitely Kira.
Yeah.
Like that is just how
It's
it
a lot
goes
of
in the
3D
show.
chess type stuff. Yeah.
Over situations where I think they do an effective job of making you understand why the characters are like, this is what this means. But looking at it on his face, you're like, bro, that doesn't mean anything. Y'all are wilding right now.
Yeah, you always went so far
Yeah.
down the hole that neither of you are acting normal anymore. Like that's why the I'll take this potato chip and eat it scene is actually effective. I watched the Big Joel video on it. I know. Is like it's such a simple, dumb concept, but like it does represent two brains attempting to like 3D chess a very simple action. I think it's delicious to me. Also, there's a girl people really like. I don't know what her deal is. What side I think she likes L. These are the things I know about Death Note. Does she get a demon girl
yeah.
also? I don't know.
Don't even.
There is a character
I don't wanna
who
go there.
people like, and there's some cool stuff about her, and I think the show wildly misuses and mistreats
Aw.
her.
Oh,
Yeah,
2007.
100%.
Oh, the fandom does
Yeah.
better by the characters than the show does.
Yeah, to be clear, like Death Note gets bad, by the way. Like it gets dumb and bad.
Well, here's my question then.
It's very cool and engaging and
Yeah.
interesting, and it's by the end of it you're like, thank God this show's over, because I'm done.
In only 2 seasons? I'm already like,
Yeah,
thank
I
God this is
wish-
over.
I wish I could spoil everything for you to explain
Is
that to
it
you, but
bad
I
boring though? That's my question.
Kind of.
I think it's less like it is like straight up less good, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like less
Yeah.
enjoyable. But this is part of like back in the day I was like this should have ended after season 1. Like that should have been the end of the show. What are you guys doing? And like
Mhm.
I think maybe that would have been better, but I think there is some merit in season 2 as like this the nature of the struggle changes in a way that I think has some merit of its own. I don't think it's as
Mhm.
good, but I think it's like okay, and these are the people that are engaged in this problem now, and this is the positions people are working from, and this is how much like the world has changed because of events, and I
Okay.
think that has real merit. And when I
Yeah,
first watched it, I was too caught up in like, oh, you moved on from the thing I liked, I'm done. And I was like, no, I
Mhm.
should have given what they are doing more of a chance. Not that I would have ultimately been like, this is incredible, but there's
Right.
stuff here.
Stray
Yeah.
additional notes on Death Note before we ask.
There's the
specific
DS
questions.
Lite in the school.
There is. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, quick little DS Lite.
Oh my god, Light
the use of-
Yagami. DS Light Yagami.
Okay. Okay. Good.
There are
That's
some
good.
DS games featuring Light Yagami. There were some Death Note DS games.
What is the game?
Which-
what
I'm
game?
so curious. I'm so
well, you
curious.
use the bottom screen to write names of the Death Note.
I mean,
probably that'd be great
yeah.
for the DS.
I think that's basic. I think it is basically like puzzle visual novels where you're trying to like kill people and get away with it. I think that's what they are. I don't know though.
That actually sounds fire.
right?
I don't know.
I don't think they're translated, but and the interesting thing about the look of the show, we've talked about the ridiculous angles and you know the zooming and the shaky cam, but not in like a not Jason Bourne shaky cam, right?
Sure.
You also get there's a lot of like the show has often a very muted color palette with only a few things popping. There's a lot of yellow and brown. There's a lot of rust everywhere, and it is just sort of an interesting like illustration of Light's perspective on the world. It's like, oh, this is a world that is decaying and is crumbling, and it needs a gardener, right? And I just think it's an interesting choice to expressly be like, no, the show and the color palette of the show agrees with Light.
Interesting. Okay. The Death Note game looks bananas. Phoenix Wright. It's
That's what I thought.
It's more
Excellent.
complicated than like you're putting like trust and doubt balloons on different characters, judging whether or not they're the criminal. What's going on? I can't look at this for too long. Somebody in a parody Let's Play called it "Knockoff Among Us."
That sounds great.
That's
Okay. Okay.
Listen, if
Yeah,
Among Us had
sure.
had doubt and trust balloons, maybe we'd be getting somewhere
hell
as a
yes.
society.
I want the
That's
Ryuk anime. Just about him. Don't need anybody else. He's got those Shinigami eyes.
He does. Those are a thing.
It's also a name of a grime song. Unfortunate. Anyways,
You know what? I'm certain it is a reference to
Yeah,
this.
it is.
God damn it.
she's like our age.
Okay.
It's okay. It's not okay. It's unfortunate. 6. Give us your pick.
I mean,
Ask your lot.
I think the thing is, Death Note is going to be a fun journey. I think there will be ridiculous and interesting things to talk about each episode, right?
Yeah.
I think there's an interesting arc to the show. I think you will have the collective moment of why didn't you end at season 1, and then you move on to season 2 and see some other interesting things and watch it struggle to find a new identity. And then also, as far as chat stability, there's some really fascinating like other material, right? There is a one shot where the Death Note goes on auction and the world leaders are trying to buy the Death Note, right?
Ooh.
Like,
Is that the Donald Trump one?
Uh-huh.
Yes. I gotta read that. I gotta read that.
There are some live action movies and stuff, including
Oh yeah,
like
we're
they
watching
have
the Netflix one for sure.
and well, there's the Netflix one. There are also the Japanese ones, which are genuinely very good and offer an alternate ending to the story that a lot of people are like, oh, this is so much better than the anime. This is how the show should have ended.
Interesting.
Interesting.
And then there's like those ended up getting their own sequel where it's like things end and then like a whole new cast of characters has to deal with a Death Note in subsequent movies and a mini series. There's a lot of stuff for y'all to dig into. There's a lot of different creators involved, a lot of different approaches, and I just think you would show up every episode with stuff to talk about, stuff to laugh about, and have a good time. Halt and Catch Fire I did not like.
Okay. Controversial but fair. This is why we have guests on, so they can give their feedback. Well, we'll take that into account. Definitely. Six, you want to give your plugs and then give us a chat some, please?
Sure. So thank you again for having me on the show.
Of course, love to have you.
As far as my stuff, you can find me on social media, Twitter or co-host at Sixdettmar, SIXDETTMAR. That's just my name. And my DMs are open if you ever want to send me anything, questions, comments, whatever. My work is found at scanlinemedia.com or patreon.com/scanlinemedia. I do a lot of podcasts, including some with my good friend Alan here. We have The Garnet Wager, which is a ridiculous show that I've heard Alan try to describe on here several times. It's very difficult, but we should have a new episode out soon, starring Magellan in a role. But before that, we will have a new episode of The Creature Quorum out, because we have a new Creature Quorum project starting where we are playing through Pokemon Black and White, one gym at a time, and just sort of talking about a revolutionary generation of Pokemon that is based on New York State. And that's weird and interesting.
Best new podcast 2024.
Nice.
Hopefully, good start, right? All the other ones that have started so far seem pretty shitty, so I like our odds. I'm just saying this.
Wow.
And then chatsums, right? So I have two, because y'all aren't happy with just one anymore, so I had to up it to two, I guess.
Okay.
One sort of inspired by your discussion of Xena Warrior Princess on a previous Couch Madness. I'm going to recommend Kamen Rider Drive. This was recommended to me by a friend of Alan and I's, Kyrie. I like the Kamen Rider series in general. It is tokusatsu, which basically means it is live action with people in costumes and practical effects, though they use some CG for stuff. But it is people in it's like Power Rangers, right? It's people in plastic costumes hitting each other.
Yeah.
And at first I did not click with Drive, because traditionally it's there are three sort of tiers of active tokusatsu. There are Super Sentai, which is what Power Rangers is based on, right? And that tends to be for kids. There is Kamen Rider, which tries to be a little edgier and is for high schoolers and teenagers. And then there is Ultraman, which is supposed to be more for adults. I don't have much Ultraman experience. I should get some. Kamen Rider Drive felt like it was going more Sentai. It felt like it was being kind of kiddie and a little too simple for me. And then I got this scene where, so our main character is a detective, and he lost someone in a big accident that caused a bunch of monsters, right? And now he's fighting the monsters. And he's working with this other guy. And they're kind of standoffish with each other, but he learns this guy also lost someone in that big accident. He's like, you know what? I feel like I had you wrong. And he sort of crouches down. They have a heart to heart, and he crouches down because the other person is a Hot Wheel. This little animated Hot Wheel. And he's like, you know what, Hot Wheel, you're all right. So that's my pitch for Kamen Rider Drive, is heart to hearts with, a little plastic car.
Okay.
It's ridiculous and dumb action, and it's kind of fun.
Where can I watch this?
That'd be great. I think you'd have fun.
Where can I watch
this?
Where?
I thought you said we're gonna. I was like, wow, that was easy. Illegally.
Okay. Fair enough.
They're not really. There is no legal way to watch it.
On my hacked PS2.
Yeah, it is. It is a old Japanese show that was never localized in any way. So you have to do your own thing.
Okay.
My second chatsum is a recommendation I've been doing everywhere, and clearly no one's listening to me, so I'm just going to do it again. There is a PC game called Toho Mystia's Izakaya. Now, it is part of the Toho series. Forget about that. That doesn't actually matter. You don't need to know any Toho stuff. Basically, this is a cooking game that is interested in the concepts of an izakaya and omakase. So izakayas are restaurants, usually bar restaurants, that open at night in Japan for people who have gotten off of work, right? Yes. You're working late, you get off, you go to an izakaya, and you have some good food, and you get a little drunk, and you relax, right?
Yeah.
So there's that, where you are spending your daytime collecting ingredients and talking to people, and then at night you open your restaurant, and stressed out people and demons show up and get some food,
relatable,
right? Yokai. But the other part of it that is the part that makes it really good, I mean, I think it would be fine without this, but is omakase. Are either of you familiar with omakase?
I've heard the name
No,
many
I don't think so.
times before. I've been told.
You'll hear it a lot in sushi restaurants. It is sort of like basically it's this is an oversimplification. It's basically saying like, I trust the chef, right? You come in and you order the omakase, you give them, like $60 or whatever, and it's like, you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to get 4 courses of just stuff that the chef thinks you'll like, right?
Yeah.
Whatever they're doing, and sometimes specialized per person. And so you get a lot of generic customers that's just, oh, here is a human, they would like a rice ball, and you give them their rice ball, right? But there are a lot of characters that are characters from the Toho series, and they come in and they're like, I don't know, I've been kind of stressed out today, I'd like something spicy. And you're like, okay, cook them something spicy. I'm going to make you could make them like, oh, I'm going to make you mabo tofu. That's a nice spicy dish. Or you could be like, you say that, I think you also want something kind of refreshing. So I'm going to make you like a sorbet and put a chili in it. And they're like, oh, this is really interesting. And so the customization to customer by like their preferences and also how they're feeling today, and you get to know them and get to know their preferences. That is really fun and really cool. People should play that game.
What is it called again?
It's Toho Mistia's Izakaya. It is pretty cheap. It's on Steam. It's coming out on Switch soon. It runs great on Steam Deck. Play the game, have a good time.
$6.
Yeah, it's cheap, dog. Also, though, you have family sharing with me, so you should just try it, and then you should buy it afterwards because it's a small indie company. Sure. Help them out.
I was playing Overcooked this week, and I was like, you know what? I would love an anime version of this.
Well, good news.
Well, thank you, Six. We're going to release you like a kite into the wind now, and we're going to take our break, and then when we come back, we'll be in our private little zone, and Magellan and I will make the final decision of who wins Halt and Catch Fire versus Death Note, and who dies. Yes. Goodbye. Bye.
Don't leave it up to Death Note, because that would happen very quick.
Welcome back to Couch Madness. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines Halt and Catch Fire as an early computer command that sent the machine into a race condition, forcing all instructions to compete for superiority at once. Control of the computer could not be regained, but control of this podcast could be. I'm still Alan, and that's still Magellan.
Hey, everybody. What's up?
Hi, welcome back. Technology, books, death, computers?
You decide.
We actually decide.
Yeah, we actually decide. Sorry, you actually have no say in this.
So where are we right now? We're always in a different sort of chamber or space. Where are we today? You said a smoky room, maybe?
Yeah, this is the smoke-filled room. Yeah.
What kind of furniture we got here?
Leather chair, leather couch, leather jackets.
Yeah, just like Joe Mac.
Yeah, Joe Mac. Leather everywhere all the time.
Okay, leather room. We're in the smoky leather room.
Yeah, feel the floor, leather.
Yeah, feel the feet, leather. Weird. That was nothing, dog. Come on.
I like the image that conjures of like you're slowly turning into leather.
Feel the legs, leather. Do a body scan, top to bottom. That's leather, baby.
That's funny.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
All right. Should we do these gut checks?
Yeah, check the gut. I've been doing a lot of planks lately, so maybe my gut is stronger. Boy, are they.
Yeah.
2 30-second sets a day keeps the doctor away.
Oof. Yeah.
You gotta do it, man. Gut check, Magellan.
Oh,
Halt and Catch Fire, Death Note.
Well, okay. Here's where I think this is a matchup where particularly I'm feeling like the tournament setup and style is like not vibing with how I would want to watch and think about these shows and deliberate on them. Because like I could watch episode 2 of both of them because I think both of them, the pilots set up what the show is going to be doing. They're not representative of what the show is necessarily.
True.
And so, there's another universe where we did a version of this season where it's not a tournament bracket. It's just like, well, we're going to watch a show until we feel like we've gotten a sense of it. Or there's a version of a chat season where it's like, we're just going to watch shows until we get bored of them and then stop watching them.
Like allowing ourselves to just drop out when we feel like
When
it's
we
no
feel
longer
like-
serving us.
Right, exactly. Which, maybe that is something we'd be interested in doing one day. I don't know. But anyway, so I'm kind of feeling bound by the fact that we have to make a decision. Also because I've seen Death Note before, so seeing the second episode doesn't provide me with any additional information. But like, I have to make a choice about which one is gonna be, I think, a better conversation or a better prospect for chats or whatever. So I think my gut check is I'm more personally curious in watching more Halt and Catch Fire. I want to see more of the show and understand more of it. And I'm kind of feeling like if I don't advocate for it now, I don't really see a context where we would return to it on our show, because there are just so many other shows that we feel more strongly about. But like at the end of the day, I think Death Note is just probably going to be more interesting to watch, and I think is going to yield more interesting discussion because it's so over the top wacky, but it also has like meat, and it's a new kind of show for us to watch. So my gut says Death Note, but it's a tough choice for me. What about you?
You're giving me a lot to think about, big man. My gut also says Death Note for now, but I'm so ready to be swayed because I personally want to watch more Death Note. I'm trying not to let that color my decision too much because, like, yeah, I think it would be fun to talk about. I love the idea of us branching out to do an anime season. I think that would be more fun for our audience also. Like, I'm just thinking about those logistics, but maybe if I talk more as we go on about Halt and Catch Fire and where I know it goes, then maybe that'll help. Because I also do just want to watch a show that you watched already for once. So, we always do the ones I watched, and you deserve a show.
I don't know that I would spend that on Death Note, but I appreciate that.
There's just not that many shows to spend it on, though, unless you want to make
exactly.
really are committed to making us do the Psych podcast.
Right, or watch like Undeclared or something random like that. It's just not very good. It's okay. It's fun. Anyway, I'm not talking about Undeclared right now. You can't make me. Okay, so let's go through the steps here. And maybe in the conversation, it'll help us to clarify and feel more strongly about the choice of Death Note. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds great to me, actually.
All right. So first, let's think about the moments that these pilots represent to us: the memes, schemes, screams, and themes. Memes, which had more moments of ironic or semi-ironic silliness. I think that's Death Note. I think we had a whole big conversation topic about how campy it is.
Yeah, tonally, yeah.
Yeah. Schemes, which had more moments of intrigue and plot movement. That's kind of a tough call, I think.
I lean Halt and Catch Fire. Just the pilot? Yeah.
Definitely in the pilot alone, yes. I would say that's right.
Yeah.
Screams, which had more moments of excitement and surprise. I think Death Note.
Yeah. Especially for me. Yeah.
And then themes, which had more moments addressing what the show is about.
I think that's Halt and Catch Fire. I think it's pretty confident in what it's about.
Yeah, I think so. All right. The clunks, hunks, junks, and punks. Clunks, which had characters that were dorkier in a fun way.
Dorkier.
My thought is Ryuk takes that win. Like, maybe Boswell. Is that his name? Bosworth. I don't know. That's kind of a hard choice.
Should I ask him to change it? Yeah, I will. Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying. I thought you were saying.
No,
sorry,
no,
that's a hard last name to say. I'd prefer he not be called Bosworth. I was like, what the fuck? What would I say to that? Dorkier, huh? I do think that's Death Note. Just Ryuk purely takes that.
Just saying juicy eating the apple is enough to win that category. Hunks is kind of a hard comparison when one is live action, one is animated. I don't know.
I don't think anybody's
it's also
on Death Note.
Yeah, I think the hunk category is also meant to be sort of like a himbo category in a way.
Yeah.
Like not like who's hotter, but like which show has like the hot character archetypes in a way that's amusing. I guess that's Halt and Catch Fire.
Yeah, and it'll
because,
continue to have
Lee
hot
Pace-
people come and go.
Lee Pace is so hot.
Lee Pace, I was going to ask you to text Amanda this. What does it mean about my mental health that when I see Lee Pace, I want to put on a dog collar and like bark like a fucking dog. What does that mean? Am I
means
good?
it means everything's working in there. Your mental is 100%.
The State of the
fine.
Union is okay.
Junks, which had characters that were more eccentric in a fun way.
Oh, that's Death Note, baby.
Yeah, that's Death Note. And then Punks, which had characters that were more rebellious in a fun way.
Halt and Catch Fire.
Okay, yeah. Foundations, the Clues, Crews, Hues, and Shoes. Clues, which has more plot to explore and unravel over time.
Death Note.
Yeah.
They build a computer and then what? Spoilers alert, there is a then what, but you just don't know what it is yet.
Crews, which has more ensemble dynamics to dig into. That's Halt and Catch Fire.
Halt and Catch Fire. There's literally 3 characters in Death Note, and one of them is Light's mom.
Hues, which has more thematic range.
I'm almost like, what do you define as thematic range, right?
I honestly feel like Death Note is the answer there, because Halt and Catch Fire feels a little narrow, or like a little hemmed in by the trappings of like being a 2010s drama.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Thematic range. I'm gonna say Death Note, sure.
Okay. And then the Shoes, which has more mileage from its base premise.
Death Note by a nose hair, because
Yeah,
we just
it's a
spent most of that
close
conversation talking about like
What
the
comes
different.
next.
Yeah, what comes next exactly.
Right. And then the other stuff, the fits, hits, its, and wits. Fits, better use of costumes and props. I think Halt and Catch Fire does a really good job storytelling and characterizing through costume.
I think Joe McMillan's leather jacket makes me want to, as aforementioned, bark like a fucking dog. So,
hits,
sorry, Mom.
better use of music.
My mom doesn't listen to this podcast. I like the music in Death Note. It's very weird.
Yeah, let's give it to Death Note. It adds to the campy flavor. Which makes better use of the cast and guests.
Halt and Catch Fire.
Halt and Catch Fire. And then, which makes better use of the script and the writing?
I think the Death Note's pilot using that non-linear storytelling method is actually kind of not non-linear, but like the time jump.
Yeah.
It's actually a pretty
like
cool move for a pilot to do.
Okay, so the score is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
This might be
7,
close.
8, 9. It's 9-7 in favor of Death Note, so it's pretty close. I think that mirrors our feelings about it. Yeah, not that I'm telling you what I'm gonna choose, but my like confidence hasn't really changed, but neither has my decision from that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Should we just put it in the chat, or do you have more thoughts on this?
My thing with Death Note is, on one hand, I will just watch this show. It's on Netflix. It's short-ish, and people would like it if I would just watched it. That way you don't have to cover it. But as Six was saying, there's a lot of fun extra material we could do little episodes about. We could be a Death Note podcast.
Yeah, I think if I woke up tomorrow and someone was like, "Hey, Chats is a Death Note podcast now," I would say, "Okay, cool. That I understand what that's going to be like, and I love it, and I can't wait." If I woke up tomorrow and someone was like, "You're a Halt and Catch Fire podcast," I would feel some trepidation about that. But that might just be a product of like not having seen the show before. But that's also I think the part of me that wants to see a second episode isn't motivated by I'm expecting to like it more. I think it's motivated by I still don't understand how I feel about the show, so I need more information. So in the context of this being like a matchup, that's why I'm leaning Death Note. I might be more interested in seeing Halt and Catch Fire, but that's coming from a place of like lack of information or like uncertainty rather than enthusiasm.
Oh, this one's hard. I don't want to do it.
I have a larger structural thought, but I want to say it after we make our decision.
Okay,
but,
hold on.
Yeah.
Let me really think about this choice before I click it. Oh God, folks, this is hard. This one is not easy. Okay, fine. I've committed.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
Alan sent me a gif of Ryuk eating an apple on a bed. That's a good gif. I chose Death Note as well, so it's Death Note. Here's my structural thought.
Okay, tell me.
I'm curious if there's any interest among our audience for us to have like a losers bracket or like a second chance opportunity or something like that within the context of this tournament.
Yeah.
Because there are, at this point, round one is done.
Congrats to everyone who won
and
round one.
What'd you say?
I said congrats to everyone who won round one. Sorry. That was a
big
wrong
big
time
claps,
to say that.
big claps.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some shows that lost round one that I think are at least worth watching the next episode of, and could potentially beat some of the things that won round one, but might not. But that's why I'm just curious, like if anybody out there is interested in a format for like a interstitial episode in the season of there's like one wild card spot, and you know, one of the shows that lost, there's going to be a matchup between our favorite losers, or we just have a conversation about a losers bracket and the winner of that gets another chance, or I don't know. I'm curious if people would like that, if that kind of just drags out the season. Because Halt and Catch Fire, Twilight Zone 80s, Sequest DSV, 6 Feet Under, Veronica Mars, Legend of Korra, Misfits, Alias, almost all of those I would be interested in watching another episode of.
Yes.
So let us know what you think about that. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have been thinking a lot about like what happens to these losers, and I think the first option that came to my mind was like we do the first place winner, then we do the second place winner, then we do the third place. Like we can just go backwards down the list. And so what happens when you lose is we won't cover you for like 3 years, and then we can watch everything, but you just won't get watched until the heat death of the universe. Or Lex comes before you. You know, whatever happens first. Oh god.
And we start chats too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Chats. Yeah, I think round 2 is gonna be full of heaters, and I agree there should be some sort of losers bracket. I think that's a great idea if people are into it.
So yeah, let us know in the Discord or via email what you think about that or what you'd like to listen to.
Yeah.
And then we'll sort of figure it out from there. In the meantime, round 2 starts next week. Isn't that exciting?
So exciting.
Do you want to hear the matchups for round 2?
Yeah, they're all heaters, so let's freaking get it.
So coming at you first is the 9th seed Heroes versus the number 1 seed Stargate SG-1. That's next week.
Bloodbath.
Absolute bloodbath. That's going to be tough. The following week, the matchup is the 12 seed, the dark horse of the bracket, Xena Warrior Princess, versus the 4th seed, Quantum Leap.
Bloodbath. Cities will be sundered by that matchup. I can't believe it.
The following week, I don't know how this one's going to go. The 7th seed Battlestar Galactica versus the 2 seed The Tick. That's a question mark for me. I'm curious. Yeah. I think also we should watch the second episode of all 3 Ticks for that matchup.
Oh,
that's my opinion.
Sure, why not?
And then following that, in a few weeks from now, number 6 seed Death Note goes up against the 3rd seed Fringe.
None of these are easy.
An absolute bloodbath. These are some tough calls over the course of the next month. So we hope you join us for all of those episodes.
I'm like shaking about some of these. Seriously, Quantum Leap versus Xena is going to like break the podcast in half. We're gonna have to.
Yeah, there's gonna be some kind of a civil war, I think.
In the Discord, amongst us, in our lives, everywhere. There will be Discord in the Discord.
Good.
Anyways,
good.
round 2 should be fun. What do we do next?
The plugs. I think it's my turn, right?
Yes, it is.
Great.
Wait, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, let me tell you. You can hear me on another podcast called Super Smash Echoes that I do with my friend Justin, where we play video games related to the Super Smash Brothers franchise, Super Smash Echoes. We got a couple episodes in the tank that I got to get off my booty and edit. So hopefully those will come to you soon. And then I have a newsletter at notthatmagellan.substack.com. You can follow me there and get my writings sometimes. I'm working on a piece now. Ooh. I don't want to speak too soon, but I might write something soon.
It's
what about you?
Oh, golly. As Six mentioned earlier, I'm on a bunch of shows on ScanlineMedia.com, including The Creature Quorum, which is now doing its new subseason, the Unova Tourism Committee. Sorry, I spoiled it. Actually, it should be out by now, hopefully. Unova Tourism Committee. Yeah, it's going to be great. We still do the Garnet Wager over there. We still do a bunch of other stuff. I'm also the primary host of Talking Marketing, which is a bi-monthly marketing podcast I do for AMA Boston. We just put out a new episode today when this is recording, the 15th. Where I interviewed two people, Teo and Blake from Idea Peddler. For the first time, I did a double interview, and it was really fun. A lot of people said it's their favorite so far. So, starting the year off with a banger of a podcast. That's me. John, where can people find chats?
In lots of different places. You can, of course, email us at chatspot@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, thoughts on the structure of the season. If you want to send in, we'd love to hear your testimony about these different matchups that are coming up. If you want to weigh in on, for next week, Stargate SG-1 versus Heroes, send it in via our email or any of these other communication channels I'm about to name. You can also follow us at ChatsPod on X, and that's, a social media site that does what social media sites do. You can talk to us there and that kind of thing. We're on YouTube. Great news. We're Chats, a television podcast on YouTube. The great news is YouTube has just made it a lot easier to have a podcast on YouTube, finally, because they've wanted to have podcasts on YouTube for so long, but made it hard. So it should be the case that now it's just automatically going up on YouTube, right? All new episodes.
Yep, whenever the RSS feed updates, it puts a video version on YouTube.
Amazing. And then we're going to discuss whether or not to put backlog seasons, like previous seasons, on YouTube as well, because it's now much easier for us to do that and not nearly as time consuming or labor intensive. Mm-hmm. If there's, for some reason, a season, if you prefer to watch or listen on YouTube for whatever reason, and there's content you would want to be there, or you have an opinion about if we should put old stuff there or not, let us know. Because I think, a handful of people chiming in, you'd have a lot of sway in that decision. Mm-hmm. Please rate us wherever you rate podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever else you can find podcasts, and pick a number of stars. We prefer 5. That's our favorite number there. Speaking of 5, you can also give us $5 or less. There's other options over at patreon.com/chatspod. $1 a month gets you onto the Discord, where you can hang out with some fun people talking about stuff all the time, and we love it. $3 a month gets you access to twice monthly bonus content, which might be us piloting TV shows or doing movie commentaries or having other conversations about other stuff that we feel like talking about. And then $5 a month and up gets you thanked right here at the end of every episode. Thank you to Arthur, Emrys, Felicia, Jen, Justin, Kyrie, Lee, Marcus, May-Louise, my mom, Nick and Pat of the Brothers at Infinite War, Noel, Six, and Stefan. Thank you, folks, for supporting the show. We have a website, chatspod.com. Thank you to @Camillustrator for our podcast art. As always, check her out on various socials. And Alan, it's now time to give our recommendations, our chatsums, here at the end of the episode. What are your chatsums for this week?
So both of my chatsums are TV related, actually. I've been watching a ton of TV as it gets colder and colder out, and beyond going to the gym and work, I don't have many reasons to go outside. So that being said, the 2 shows that have provided me a lot of comfort in the past week are the new Netflix show Pokemon Concierge, which is a claymation animated series that takes place on a tropical island, and it follows a young woman who's a concierge as part of this resort, and she's helping Pokemon find their happiness. It is 4 episodes. They're all they're 15 minutes long. I watched all of it twice because it's so breezy and easy to watch. Really sweet, really wonderful animation style. And the last episode's very emotional. It's about a Pikachu who doesn't know how to express his emotions well. So you can imagine that one gets really sweet and adorable. Yeah, highly recommend to Pokemon Concierge if any of that sounds up your alley. And then my other chatsum is just a sort of project that I found myself coming back to after Magellan and I established this sort of precedent years and years ago amongst ourselves, which is my Simpsons watch list spreadsheet. So for those who don't know, I've always enjoyed The Simpsons, but like many kids, I wasn't allowed to watch it as a child. So I would catch clips of it, or I'd watch it like secretly here and there, very little of it. And I missed out on the zeitgeist. And then I think like it feels, man, like 2014, 2015 is when I finally was like, let's make the watch list. And what I learned quickly was that at the time, like making a spreadsheet of every Simpsons episode to watch basically amounts to you should just watch the first like 8 seasons without, there's no like episode not worth your time. Right. So now my new method has been to go back to that watch list, and I'm only watching the episodes for now that either you put a bold on, which means that I believe that meant that you're a big fan of those, or they are episodes that explicitly feature like well-known Simpsons memes. The problem is that not the problem. This is a good thing. The Simpsons is so prolific as a television show and so prevalent in pop culture that every time I watch one, I go online and I find 3 more. There are so many Simpsons memes. And they're always from different episodes. And I just can't stop adding to this list. I've watched so much Simpsons. I will never be done. And that's okay.
That like golden era of The Simpsons, I think, is untouchable in terms of like consistent episode quality. I couldn't tell you another show that's just banger after banger, no skips for that long. So
like 3 to 8, dude. 3 to 8 are
so
just like
good.
I'm looking at my list, and it's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's like, just watch the season. Like, what, that's not this is no longer a watch list. This all started because I read a piece from Emily St. James about Marge versus the Monorail on her episodes newsletter recently. And guys, I rewatched Marge versus the Monorail, and that episode, speaking of like unassailable quality, is bananas good. It's like it's so fast. Like, there's so many hard laughs in Marge versus the Monorail that you're like, this is breakneck, honestly. They would never make shows like this funny, every single line is like, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. And then, here's 3 seconds later, here's another one. It's been truly wonderful. I just watched Springfield, but the S is a $sign. That's the episode where they open the casino. And what's funny is the meme that comes from that one is the one where Homer goes up to Bart in his bed and he says, "Hi, I don't know if you knew this, but there's a boogeyman or boogeymen." And it's like, that has the memes often have nothing to do with the episode, which is so funny to me. Because the reason for that is that Marge is like stuck at the casino gambling, and Homer becomes the parent for the day and doesn't know how to parent. So he gets afraid of the boogeyman, which is amazing. Just it's been a delight. I'm gonna probably watch A Streetcar Named Marge tonight. That's the next one on the list.
Nice. That one's great.
Yeah. You have on my list here, you have the parenthetical next to it. Dig it.
Dig it.
Dig it. So I have so much Simpsons ahead of me. It's nice to just have a show that's consistently good. I don't like to say shout outs to Disney Plus, but shout outs to Disney Plus for letting me watch all of it easily.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your chatsums for this week?
Let's see. What was my chatsum? I totally knew what it was. Oh, I remember. Okay. So I got some amazing news recently.
You're pregnant.
Which is, I'm pregnant with excitement. Okay. And I'm happy about that. And now the metaphor is going to end, so I can continue my previous sentence.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's okay. I was very, very enthusiastic and excited to learn that NCSoft, the company that developed the greatest MMO of all time, City of Heroes, recently officially licensed the fan-made City of Heroes revival servers thing called City of Heroes Homecoming. So now it's not like kind of a thing of, we're going to keep doing this, but at any moment somebody might sue us and shut it down. And now it's just City of Heroes is back, and it's the same thing, and it's free to play, and it's legal. Like, it's cool. This is fine.
It's a sanctioned City of Heroes server, basically.
I'm so hype about it. I've got it on my computer. I am like millimeters away from getting it working on my Steam Deck also, which is going to be transformative for me. But here's the freaking problem. Can I tell you what's happening to me? This is like the hilarious nonsense of being a PC gamer sometimes. So you have to like run the executable with this other application because Steam Deck runs Linux, right?
Uh-huh.
So when I run that application from the like Steam Deck mode and I try to do the command to bring up the virtual keyboard to type in my account information, the virtual keyboard doesn't overlay on top of the game. It's like a window underneath the game. So I can't see the keyboard to type in my account information.
Oh.
So then I do it in desktop mode and it's the same issue. So then it's like, okay, I'll run the game windowed. And when I do that, I can see the keyboard, but for some reason the window is a vertical rectangle where
Whoa.
it's like a ton of black space above the game. And so only half of the game is actually on screen. So like I was able to get my username and password in and get in there, but then I had to scroll through these terms of use and I couldn't scroll far enough to hit the accept button because it was off the screen. So it runs fine. I just can't log in because the Steam Deck's dumb. So I'll hook up a keyboard to it or whatever, and that'll be fine. But anyway, it's that same City of Heroes you remember. You can go ahead and make a character. It's awesome. City of Heroes Homecoming is what it's called, and it's cool to play it now.
I never once played City of Heroes. I did play Champions Online briefly, and it didn't click with me.
It was all right. I didn't
Yeah.
love Champions Online.
I could never get past a certain point. I just got annoyed with it. But I know how much City of Heroes means to you, and technically means to the history of this podcast, right? Because City of Heroes to BNL to podcasting pipeline is real, and it's true. So I will definitely be checking this out at some point. Why not?
Awesome.
We'll make I don't know what power set I want. Probably just flight and like big punching. Nice and simple.
You could do that. Yeah, you could do that.
Groovy. City of Heroes Homecoming. Awesome. Well, Machan, that's what we got. I'm sad because it's over, but I'm happy because we get to do more. We still have so much more recording or talking to do today. So we have a chat annual meeting that'll hopefully come with some announcements or reconfiguring of content for you guys out there. We hope you've been enjoying the show. Thank you to Magellan for being the Ryuk to my light Yagami, because who doesn't need a little freak in their lives? And thank you all for listening to this episode of Couch Madness. Bye.